I am going to get started. Um, Thank you again for those who are able to join us today. I am Kathy Lord, and we are here for the Women and Wealth 101, the Financial Basics Everyone Should Know workshop. So just for awareness, this session is being recorded for marketing purposes, which allows those who are unable to join us today to listen to the recording and to hear the dialogue and the educational opportunity. If there's something more that they're interested in digging into, they have the ability to go back and replay this presentation. I am recording this again just for educational purposes as well as a lesson learned for myself as I go through these workshops. Just want to be mindful if there's anything that I need to improve upon or if I could do better. I'll come back and watch some of these. So again, a couple housekeeping details. If you could keep yourself on mute if you have a lot of background noise, or if you wanted to raise your hand and ask a question, that's perfectly okay. Taking yourself off camera, taking yourself off mute. But if you do have a lot of background noise, feel free to mute yourself so we don't get any disruptions with the presentation. And stick around as we'll be sharing the link for the free workbook a little bit later. So again, what's my story? Kathy Lord, I'm a financial coach. I started my business last year. I actually had been in a variety of roles in corporate America, if you will. And I just, after 30 years and moving up into leadership, I was just really interested in something different. And my organization, I was getting burned out and I needed a change. So when my organization offered early buyouts, I actually took it. And it was a little scary at first, but through a lot of planning, mindfulness, and opportunities, I've been able to retire from corporate America and launch my own financial coaching business. I'm almost having my 1-year anniversary, which is very exciting coming up. And with that, I got financially certified by Ramsey Solutions. And I'm just very passionate about this topic, just really hoping to grow financial literacy and awareness so that women and specifically feel more comfortable about their finances. I also have an identical twin. She's very instrumental. She's my guinea pig for helping me with a lot of my presentations and my materials. I have 2 college-age sons, and I love to travel and read. So often, as I'm talking about my presentations, you'll hear me make some book recommendations. So let's go. So when you hear the word wealth, what comes to mind? So again, for many of us, being wealthy might be you have to be someone famous, or it could be, you've got to be a rock star, or you've got to be a singer, or you got to be one of these social media, people that just really has a large following. That's the only way you're going to be able to get rich. A lot of people just feel, they'll never have a chance to be wealthy because in general, it's too late for them. Or maybe they just feel that there's no way to, manage growing their wealth because their day-to-day spending just, takes too much of their money every paycheck or pay period. And so oftentimes people just feel there's nothing left over to help me grow my wealth. And so for me, I just want to kind of help them as we talk through this to kind of think about what is a financial plan? Why do you need a financial plan? And how do you create a financial plan? Because I truly believe if we can get organized in these basic 7 steps, then you will be on your way to grow your wealth. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be fast. It's not going to be easy, depending on where you are in your financial journey. But I do think it's important. I pulled together this workshop because I just wanted other women to know you're not alone. There's resources and there's individuals out there to help you. This is no shaming. We're not here to shame anyone. We're not here to judge anyone. We're here to just get educated. And that's really at the core of what, my coaching is all about, is really to bring more financial literacy, hopefully to eliminate some of the jargon and just the unknown out there, to bring individuals together so that they can learn and grow in their finances. So today's goals is to really bring some essential building blocks to financial planning. Financial planning is not in my perspective. Now, I'm not a certified financial planner, but I think for me, having a financial plan means something written down that helps me to achieve um, and my success to be wealthy. And with that, I think there's some key steps or principles that are out there to help you to achieve that financial success. But it's so important, in my opinion, that as we develop our financial plan, we write it down. It doesn't just stay up here in our heads, but it's something that we actually put down on paper and we put together a plan. So today we're going to go over those 7 steps, and it's hopefully going to bring help you to feel more confident and informed about your finances, and hopefully lessen some of your overwhelm. So let's get started, everyone. So with that, I want you to think about, what do you feel today, which might have been why you signed up for the workshop. What does life look like if you don't have a financial plan? When I talk a lot through my coaching, a lot of people say, I just don't want to look at my money because I don't feel like I have control of it. Or I really am worried about the future. I know that there's no way I can retire. I'll never save up enough money. So I avoid it, and I think a lot of people are just not sure, like, how much money do they need to retire? Or, they just have this perspective that, oh, I'll never be wealthy because I will never get to $100 million. And so I think it's important for us to kind of recognize we all have our own perception of what it is to be wealthy. There is not a standard out there. I'm sure you've heard about being a millionaire, but there's no standard. You can have $50,000 in the bank and feel like you are the wealthiest person in the world. You define that for yourself. No one else can define that for you. And so I think it's really important for us as women and Americans to just kind of recognize we need to spend time thinking about our financial plans. We often do not spend a lot of time on this topic, and I think that needs to change. And I asked our friend Google how many people have a written financial plan, and basically only 1 in 3 people have a financial plan. And I think that's something that we really need to look to improve upon in the future. And so what could it feel like if you do have a financial plan? So we talked a little bit about how chaotic it might feel if you don't have a financial plan. I think the biggest thing having a financial plan is, if you're like me, even if you're unsure if you could achieve the plan, having facts, having data brings comfort to me. And so I believe having a financial plan could bring you some calm as you're thinking about your future, as you're thinking about your accounts and where you want them to go. And I think even if your plan isn't perfect, like it still needs to be tweaked later on, I just think, having a plan, hey, then you're, better than 2/3 of Americans out there. And I think it's important, the financial plan can build a little bit of a safety for you and your family, because it could bring that awareness and those facts and about your money that could bring in a little bit of peace. Now, you may not be happy with the time it might take you to get to, kind of resolve your plan or execute on your plan. But even if a plan isn't perfect, it's still a plan, and it's a guiding opportunity for you to improve. And I think it also helps you to not be panicked and not have anxiety because you have that plan. Dave Ramsey mentioned earning a lot of money is not the key to prosperity. It's how you handle it. And so I think that's really important for us to keep in mind as we move forward. So our first step in our 7 steps of financial planning is you got to set a goal. And with that, you really need to think about, with that goal, you have to define, what does it mean to be wealthy? Some people might say, I want to have $50,000 in my emergency fund, or I want to have $1 million to retire, or I want to have, 300,000 in my retirement fund. I want to have a net worth of insert number. I think it's really important that before you get started, you got to think about, where do you want to go? And so with that, you've got to document your goals, what matters to you, because oftentimes it may not be only a number, it might be a plan, or it might be a direction. And so I think that's where you've got to kind of balance what are some, some values that you have as an individual? Where do you want your life to go? What are those life-based goals? Is it freedom to retire early? Is it you want peace when you think about your money? All of these are potential options, but you need to think about a goal. And if you're just getting started, I would think of a short-term goal. What's something that you can do within 1 year? And then as you start achieving and getting more awareness around those goals, then you can start thinking of mid-year goals or long-term goals. Mid-year might be 2 to 3 years. Long-term goals might be 5 years. Could even be 10 years. Could be 20 years. You just have to decide. I really recommend the SMART process, which is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And so what does that mean? Now, what's an example, Kathy? And so with that, a SMART example for a financial goal might be, I want to retire at age 65, which happens to be in May of 2029. Specific, what do you want to accomplish? I want to retire. And so this individual has defined what does it mean to retire. And so they want to define the retirement savings plan because that's a measurement for them. They really want to boost up the retirement savings plan and then monitor the growth monthly. Because for them to retire at age 55, they have this number in their head of where do they want to go. So how can they achieve it? Is it realistic? Well, at first they've got to pay off their debt. And so they need to call that out. They really need to define, I have to pay off my debt, which then allows me to focus on increasing those 401k contributions. And so for this client, it was achievable. It was one of the most important financial goals that they wanted to set out, but they had to recognize, I personally believe you can't focus on three number ones. You got to pick one, focus on it. And for this person, it was, I got to get out of debt. Then they can really focus in on the retirement contributions. Is it relevant? There was a lot of importance of this goal for my client because their parents worked until they died. She did not want this to be her. And so she wanted to make sure she allowed herself some time to retire with dignity so that she could pursue her passions of volunteering more in her community. So it was important to her that, she really focused on it and knuckled down. And there's time sensitivity around it because, again, she wanted to pay off her debt because she really needed to kickstart her retirement planning so that she could put an extra $25,000 annually in her retirement fund. And so she had to set an aggressive goal to get out of debt in 1 year, which then let her go all in into her retirement so that she could retire at age 65 like she wanted to. That would be a SMART financial goal: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Welcome, Victoria. So glad you could join us.
Thank you.
I'm going to continue on. Let me know if you have any questions. You can go ahead and put it in the chat if you do. We're talking about goals, and there are 7 steps of financial planning. And so I think it's really important for us to set SMART goals and oftentimes create some, they call micro steps, where you can think of 2 or 3 action steps so that you can make some tractions against your financial goals. Because having those action steps helps to really build your confidence that the goal might be achievable and give you that hope and hopefully that momentum to move forward with progress and completion. With that, our second step in our financial planning is assessing your current financial situation. You really got to be honest. The first step was setting goals. The second step is just recognizing where are you financially. And so with that, you've got to understand what your starting point is. You got to review your financial information, what's your income, what's your expenses, what kind of savings or investments you might have, and what's your debt. Because most importantly, having awareness is power, not judgment. It's just power and knowledge about facts. And I think it's really important that by having that full picture, it really brings that clarity to your situation, whether it's good or bad. And I recently was reading a book by Valerie Burton, The Rules of Resilience. And I love this one comment she made in her book was, you really have to be honest with yourself. You can't pretend. Because if you pretend and try to hide away from your financial situation and just ignore that data, then you can't fix the problem if you don't admit there is one. And so I really think that's so important for us to think about as we're assessing where we are financially. You got to bring out all the good and the bad and the ugly to make sure that you move forward with knowledge. And so with that, the next thing is you got to create a budget. I know there's a lot of people who don't like to talk about budgeting. They don't want to be restricted by budgeting. They don't want to talk about a spending plan. But I truly believe in the research is out there. You've got to have awareness to where your money is going, especially before the month begins, not at the end of the month when all the money is gone. So I put on the screen a couple suggestions on some of the leading apps based on NerdWallet recommendations. I'm also a spreadsheet person, so I put mine in Google Sheets. But remember, a budget is supposed to be there to support your life with your needs, your wants, and what your future intentions are. It's not meant to punish us. And so with that, you've got to create a spending plan that works for you. And you really need to define, when you first start out, it doesn't have to be very specific. It can be very high level. You want to have this much for utilities when you start out, because if this is the first time you're doing a budget, just, for the first 90 days, start high level. And then as you can get more comfortable with the process, you can then get more granular that says, okay, how much on electric, how much on water, how much on my cell phone, how much on, the cable bill, etc. But it's really important that you have a plan, and you've got to be flexible with the plan. I know a lot of people talk about it's really hard sometimes to stick with a budget. I have a couple pharmacy bills, and oftentimes I go in the donut hole, which means you have to pay for there's so much your insurance is going to cover. And then once you hit that hole, you've got to fork over maybe a couple $100. One time it was $1,500. And then I would pay for it. Then I would eventually hopefully hit my, max out of pocket, and then they would cover the rest of it. But you've got to be flexible sometimes with your spending plan, because you don't know what life is going to throw at you. But you've got to have a plan. I recommend writing it out, whether it's in an app or a spreadsheet, or it could even be a sheet of paper. But you got to write it out, and you got to do it before the month begins. And then just do a review once you've got all your spending done for that month, and then you look ahead for the future. And so with that, another sidebar is people don't like the word budget. They think, again, it's very restrictive, which you might have heard me saying spending plan. So, a lot of people don't like that B word. And so I really recommend thinking about your opportunity, think about your opportunity to perhaps reframe budgeting, because a lot of people just don't like it. A budget doesn't feel very empowering. And I know for me personally, it can feel, a little restrictive, and it can feel sometimes, that there's just a bad reputation around it. And so I've started using a spending plan. It helps me to kind of feel more empowered that I'm choosing to put my spending where I want it to go. So that's just me. It just gives me more positivity around the topic. If either one of you want to put in the chat, do you have any negative connotation about budgeting, or doesn't matter for you?
You want me to say it?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Victoria, if you want.
Well, I don't budget like sounds restrictive. I like a zero-based budget. I mean, I get what every dollar has a home. If you put, you end up, spending plan. I don't think I just plan. I don't know it. I think maybe zero, like what is a proposal. But it doesn't have to feel bad for me. You've got
good.
Do it. You don't, more on a spending action, but okay.
Sorry, Victoria, you were breaking it up a little bit. I don't know if it's my connection or yours, but
Because it's a sometimes in the winter.
Victoria, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. Maybe if you could turn off your camera, I wonder if it'll help with the Wi-Fi connection. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's better. Thank you. And so, again, a quick reminder of where we've, Victoria, you came in a little bit late. So this was the financial planning steps that I introduced at the beginning of the presentation. There's 7 of them. We've covered 3 of them so far. The setting financial goals, assessing your current finances, and then creating a budget. And so again, please remember that this is being recorded. So if you wanted to go back a little bit to see what you had missed, this is going to be available for you. So I'm going to share the link tomorrow. Oh, you're most welcome. And we'll have 4 more steps to go. So let's get going. So next up is emergency fund planning. A lot of people have heard of emergency funds. I think the important thing is oftentimes you might hear in the financial industry, there's 2 types of emergency funds, whether you have a starter emergency fund or a full-blown 3 to 6 months emergency fund. I think it's important that we all, if you have to get out of debt, you have some form of a starter emergency fund. That to me is a peace of mind. It's also a form of self-care that says, if we've got anxiety about how we're going to pay for things that pop up while we're getting out of debt, having a starter emergency fund can be very beneficial to just give you that peace of mind to sleep at night. But I also think having a fully funded emergency fund can really bring some financial stability to you. As you get out of debt and you're moving forward, it can really help boost your peace of mind to know that if I mentioned about I had once when I hit the donut hole, I had to come up with $1,500 to pay for my prescription. Knowing that I have that emergency fund where I can draw that from cash, I don't have to worry about, having anxiety around, how am I going to pay if the car breaks down? What am I going to do about this pharmacy or a medical bill? Cindy put in the chat, she loves having $30,000 in her fund because it lessens her anxiety. I think that is so important because when you have that emergency fund, you're less likely to go into credit card debt or get a high interest loan because you can rely on that cash and then you just work on boosting it back up to the level that you're comfortable with. And again, having an emergency fund is really a good safety net because life will happen. And I think it's so important that, again, if you are in debt, you start small. You start with a $1,000 emergency fund. And then as you get out of debt and you're trying to build your fully funded emergency fund, best practice is anywhere from 3 to 6 months of expenses. And again, 3 to 6 months doesn't include all the extra things. 3 to 6 months is your core living expenses. For you to maintain your core living expenses, think about your 4 walls, your shelter, transportation, your food, and utilities. It doesn't include all the extras like vacation, let's say. So keep that in mind as you're building that. Step 5 is buying insurance. If you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, which is where I got my training from, he talks a lot in his Financial Peace University about insurance is a gotta do. None of these on the screen is in his recommendations, some that you wait until you get out of debt, because these, again, all of these are insurance transfers of risk to someone else besides you. And so there's 8 types that he recommends. Auto insurance, if anyone's ever gotten into a car accident, it is not fun having to know how am I going to pay for my car getting replaced. And so you got to have auto insurance. You got to have homeowners insurance and rental insurance. A lot of people, when there's accidents that happen at apartment buildings, they don't think about they think their landlord is going to cover the insurance. The renter's insurance is to cover your belongings. There's also umbrella insurance, but umbrella insurance is only necessary if you have a net worth. It's recommended above $500,000. If you're below that net worth of $500,000, then wait a little bit, because umbrella insurance is just a little bit more coverage to help you as you're gaining more wealth in your portfolio. And so that's something to look at once you've got a little bit of a higher net worth. Health insurance. We all got to have health insurance to cover us if we get sick, we got to go to the doctor, or if an accident happens. Long-term disability insurance. If you fall or if you get hurt at the workplace, it's so important that you have long-term disability insurance so that you have coverage for your salary. There's also long-term care insurance. If you are greater than 65 years, they recommend long-term care insurance so that if you ever get sick and you need to have nursing home care or additional care, you have insurance that's going to cover that, because it can be extremely expensive to go into a nursing home without having any coverage. Medicare insurance does not cover long stays in a nursing home. Long-term care can help cover that. There's also identity theft protection, and make sure you get it with restoration services so that if your identity is stolen, they are going to restore your identity for you and go through all the hassle of recovering your identity and getting all the craziness cleared up. There's also term life insurance. If someone is relying upon your salary for their living expenses, it's very important that you have term life insurance. With that, if you do have a fully funded emergency fund, it is something for you to consider. Recently, we were renewing, looking at new auto and homeowners insurance, and we boosted up our deductible to $1,000. I think it was $1,000, because again, we've got our emergency fund. So if we ever had that need for needing to rely on that policy, we've got the $1,000 that we could quickly pull out. So our actual premium can actually go down, because instead of having something smaller like a $250 deductible, we have a $1,000 deductible, so that the premium can be a little bit less. So it can be a big difference. So something for you to think about. The other thing I forgot to mention is when you're thinking about the term life insurance, sometimes your employer will offer that as an opportunity as part of your employee benefits. But I do think it's important that if you are one that changes jobs frequently, you might want to consider to get a term life insurance policy outside of what's offered as an employer benefit, just because you're moving around so much. You don't want to be without that insurance. Okay, moving on. We have now gotten 5 steps completed. We've covered a lot. I know it can be overwhelming. Try to pace yourself, and remember the recording is going to be available for you tomorrow if you wanted to refresh your memory. We've got 2 more: investments and regular reviews. When should you do it? So investment strategy, I'm not going to talk too much into this topic because I am not a certified financial planner, but I want to give you a little bit of things to consider. I think it's important for you to have a strategy, and there is 3 things for you to think about. One is you have to define what is the risk that you're willing to take. Some people are high risk. I'm a high risk person. I'm willing to take the risk in the market to get a really big return. Other people are like, nope, Kathy, I'm steady Eddie. I don't want anything risky. I want bonds. I want maybe annuities. 3 to 4%, I'm perfectly content with. You have to decide what is your risk factor that you want to take. And with that, you then have to balance. Hello, Jessica, welcome. You have to decide what type of risk that you want to take from an investment perspective. Thank you for joining us, Jessica. This session is going to be recorded, so if you wanted to take a look at it later on, I'm going to be sharing the replay tomorrow.
Thank you.
But with your investments, I do think it's really important that you automate your contributions. One of the best things that is out there, from what I understand, they now automatically enroll you and a new employer in your 401k. I think that is wonderful because it just helps us to get used to automating not only our increases that we might be doing, but also just kind of getting used to the process. That automation, even if it's smaller amounts, can really help you grow your investment portfolio over time. So we talked a little bit about risk. I think the other thing is really important is you do a periodic rebalancing. I myself recently was looking into my health savings account and noticed one of my portfolio options that I'm investing in, it's just not been doing very good for the last year or two. And so I was like, this is the time. I'm going to have to rebalance it. I'm just not happy with it. They recommend you should think about doing a rebalancing every 12 months. If you're not seeing the rate of return that you're looking for, there's a lot of information out there, ladies, that, I really would recommend going out there Googling to really understand how do you invest? How do you educate about the rate of return? How do you understand what is a diverse portfolio? And learning about mutual funds. You don't have to be certified to be a financial planner, to do a little bit of education to help you to understand what's your risk. And so if you're willing to take high risk, then okay, you're looking for a better rate of return. How do you measure the rate of returns on your investment portfolio? And then what's the best for diversity? And so I'm going to give you a little bit of knowledge in the next slide about that diverse portfolio. But the other thing I would really recommend as you're understanding your investment strategy is when you have a life-changing event, it's so important that you look at your portfolio perhaps to see if it needs to be rebalanced. So for me, when I retired last year, I had a conversation later in the year with my financial advisor because I'm no longer getting employer deposits or employee contributions. And so it's really important that if you have a life event, a divorce, maybe a new child, really important for you to kind of take a look at your portfolio and see if it's still applicable to you. And the other thing, again, the most important thing for you to do is to automate your investments, monitor them, and make sure that they're growing at the scale that you're looking for your wealth strategy. And so with that, again, you don't need to be an expert or wealthy to invest, but you need to get started and you need to have some basic awareness of where to start. And so with that out there, one of the best practices is the 25% in these 4 mutual fund mixes. First thing to be aware on the screen, there's growth and income, which is often commonly referred to as large cap or large capital or capitalization, I believe. So when I say cap, I'm talking about capitalization. Then there's aggressive growth which is often called small cap. Then there's regular growth, which is frequently mid cap. And then there's global or international. If you're getting started, they recommend best practice is put 25% in each one of these categories. And so as again, don't not invest. If your employer is going to start doing a 401k for you, don't put it all under one. I would really recommend if you're just going to get started, pick some within these 4 groups. And again, you're looking for a really good rate of return, a 3 to 5 year rate of return of, double digits. Awesome. But take a look at that and just you want to have a diverse portfolio. They recommend you start with these 4. And I personally, in my strategy, I don't like international. It never seems to do very well for me. I don't know why I pick wrong. So I think I only have 15% in international, but you have to do you. And for someone who's just getting started, these are really, it's a really good starting point. And one of the things to keep in mind is when you're putting it in an investment, you're thinking about my 30-year return, my 40-year return. You're not thinking about a 1-year return or a 2-year return. So really think about, I am not going to worry. There's a lot of drama right now, especially since the president took office, about the stocks and what's going on in the stock market. You've got to be very aware you are in it for the long haul. Don't let the news reports get you scared and be pulling out and then going back in and pulling out or going back in. Investments are for the long haul. If you are worried about and wanting to pull money out and then putting it back in, then start with a savings account until you're more comfortable. But investment is your best rate of return out there. You just have to understand where are you willing to leverage from a mixture portfolio, your risk. And all of these, I think, have a good rate of return. Some of them could have a very high risk rate of return. You just have to kind of see, where do you want to be? Your best options also are considering to leverage tax advantage accounts. That might be your 401k. And then be consistent. Don't stop and start, like I mentioned. Focus on the growth. Again, when you're looking at the rate of return, you want, what's the rate of return for 1 year, 3 year, 10 years, if the funds are available to show you the longer rate of return. You're looking for ones that continue to grow and have positive rate of returns in the hopefully double digits. And then again, just understand what your risk is and where you're willing to put your money and reduce it. You reduce your risk losing it all, if you will, this fear people have because of your diversity in your portfolio. And then the other thing to keep in mind is mutual funds, I believe, are very well established companies out in the market. When I'm not one for a lot of investment in single stocks in my 401k. My 401k is all about mutual funds. And then if I have extra money to invest in my brokerage account, which is not my 401k, that's where I might buy some single stocks. But again, your retirement accounts, investments, you've got to figure out what you want to do. But typically your 401k, your best bet is going to be around mutual funds. If you have any questions that I might be able to answer, feel free to put that in the chat and I'll see what I can do. The last step in our financial planning that we're going to talk about is doing a regular review and adjustment. I talked again about how you should be reviewing your investment portfolio, but your entire financial plan, you really should be reviewing it annually just to kind of see where you are. And again, building a budget, setting your goals, when you think about your insurance review, all of these steps that we go through that we've been talking about so far, you want to do an annual review just to kind of see, are you in the right place that you were hoping to be, 12 months ago that when you had set out. You want to do a check-in on your long-term goals, making sure that you're continuing to stay on track. You want to make sure that you're doing a look at your financial health. Maybe your expenses have gone up, but your income's maybe gotten a little stagnant. Maybe there's some adjustments that you have to do there. You should be measuring your net worth. I haven't really talked too much about that, but that's one of the other things that you could be looking at when you're doing an annual review. And hopefully with this plan, it's bringing a little bit of the lesser anxiety because you're kind of seeing the long-term potential that you're developing as you define your financial plan. And it's also, I think, an opportunity to celebrate your wins that you've done and completed in the last 12 months. Those regular reviews can really help you to understand your direction, celebrate successes, and then one of the other positive negatives is, hey, you might be able to see had something happened with maybe one of your accounts. Maybe there's been some fraudulent activity. And so making sure that you monitor those accounts and take a look at them, I think it's really important to be mindful of that. The other thing to keep in mind is when you're thinking about your spending plan, if you're not one to be monitoring, you should be monitoring your budget every month, but really take a look at your annual spending plan on a quarterly basis, because again, you just need to be flexible with it because life happens and sometimes you need to do some adjustments. And then I really recommend maybe ask a friend to be an accountability partner, so maybe you can grow your financial plans together. And with that, I think it's really important. Michael Hyatt is an author, and he had this quote out there that I really loved. Most people spend more time planning a vacation than they do planning their long-term life. And so I really think it's important, building a financial plan helps you to be mindful. It helps you to kind of really think about where do you want to go. And so one of the things that, I'm a big believer in, before you start something big, and it's going to be a big change and it might require some sacrifice or an investment of time, you really should think about what are some of the roadblocks that I might run into as I'm trying to move forward. And one of the roadblocks I hear a lot with people when they think about retirement is, I'm not good with money. Like I'll never be able to retire. I'll never be able to set aside enough money to make this happen, or I'm not good at investment. And so really have to remind ourselves, feel free to put anything in the chat if you've got a robot that you think you might run into, really helping yourself to build a mindset to correct and move move ahead of that block. And again, if you're not good with money, you just got to tell yourself, well, every day I'm going to hold myself accountable to tracking my expenses, and I'm going to get better over time. You just got to be aware and mindful to continue to affirm the positive action that you want going forward. And so with that, I'm a big believer of embracing affirmations. One of my favorite songs is the song by Mandisa, which is Overcomer. Whenever I get stuck or I think I'm not going to make it or I'm never going to make this goal, I'll listen to this song to really remind myself that I can overcome anything and move forward. And so I'm a big believer in affirmation because I really think it helps to move us forward because it just motivates us. It brings, us to a happier place. It brings, whether you've got a quote or maybe there's a place in the Bible that you go to, or some scripture, or just for me, it's a song. You really have to bring those affirmations back into your world. So if you are getting a little down, or you're like, I'm not going to meet my goal, and you're losing that motivation, I think these affirmations can really help you to move forward and continuing on. Because that, oh yes, so important, Jessica, how you speak to yourself. Sometimes I have to tell myself in front of the mirror, so I'll believe it a little bit more. But yeah, I think it's really important because for us, being able to achieve these goals, these are long-term goals. Often so many of the financial goals that we have, like I said, it's a 20-year goal, especially for me trying to retire early. That was 30 years in the making. It wasn't a one-year thing. And so it takes a while to keep you motivated for such long-term opportunities. And so really encourage you to change, make sure that you've got these affirmations in your corner because you really need to change your beliefs, to change your behaviors to succeed in the long term. And so with that, here's a quick recap. We've covered about setting financial goals, assessing your money, being honest. Don't try to lie to yourself. Don't try to hide anything. You've really got to be intentional and be factual with your finances. Got to create a budget or a spending plan. Have some form of emergency fund set aside. We're going to reassess all of our insurance needs that we have. Dave Ramsey has 8 that he recommends, and I support all 8 of them. You want to set an investment strategy and do a little bit of research to get you comfortable. So many women do not have confidence in investment, but you got to do a little bit of research, talk to people, talk with others, and I know that will really help bring not only awareness to your own decisions, but again, build that confidence that we all need. And then doing that regular review and perhaps adjustments on an annual basis. And I truly believe we're all going to be capable of wealth. We just have to have one informed decision at a time. And so with that, what's one small action that you might take this week to start developing your own financial plan? Does anyone want to come off mute? Jessica, did you have anything you wanted to share or put it in the chat?
I think one thing that you did share, and I apologize, I'm a little late.
That's okay.
One thing that I did get so far from this is going back and reviewing my financial investments, like my 401k, my traditional IRA, and kind of what the breakup is there, especially with my traditional IRA, because I'm seeing that number tank like just the last 2 weeks. My 401k has gone down a little bit, but not as much. So that tells me there's something in the investment piece I need to look at.
Yeah. Well, and again, just taking a look at the rate of return, that's where it's, okay, my rate of return maybe for 3 months was only 4%, but is my rate of return, 10% for 12 months. But again, it's being mindful, monitoring it. And then you're like, okay, let me just keep monitoring it maybe for a couple more months before I take action. But you hit it there. I think, again, it's just got to be mindful of it and be aware of it. And I think that's where, too, just having that annual review really helps you to see where was I, and then what did I want? Like, where did I want to go? Like, did you hope to have 10%? Because again, markets are going to do like this. And I really don't recommend monitoring, your 401k on a daily, weekly basis, but quarterly basis, and just making sure you're continuing to see growth. And sometimes, like I mentioned, my health savings account, like it continued to have like smaller rate of return, like still good rate of return. I think it was like 6%. But when the other ones are doing 12 or 15, I got to move that one up, and so just monitoring, I think, is so important. Cindy put in the chat, one thing she wants to work on is saving more before spending for retirement. Okay, that's a good one too, because that one, I think it was Warren Buffett. You gotta save before spending, not saving after spending. It's so important that you set aside your savings first. Very good. Thank you, Cindy. And so with that, I'm going to put in the chat the link to the workbook that I have for everyone. That is the first link for you. When you go out there, I've got a workbook specific for this event that really kind of embraces those 7 steps I was talking about. Gives you some reflection space for you to kind of think about, what is it that what money goal do I want to achieve? What are those values that I want to focus on, build awareness to? What's my spending plan? What's my opportunities for growing my money? Really kind of assessing maybe your awareness on your investments, doing that insurance checklist I talked about, how you might be able to build your emergency fund, do a financial have you do a financial snapshot of where you are, and then again, a 30-day action plan that you can work on next. And then with that, just again, a reminder about my services. As a financial coach, a lot of what I do, oftentimes I hear, Kathy, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to start to get out of debt. And part of my service is just hopefully bringing some awareness to people. How do they get out of debt? How do they build freedom to pay their debt off early? How can they, kind of get their debt organized? But it's also to help them define some financial goals. A lot of people aren't sure where to start. And so again, I help people really build some clarity and some structure around their finances, help them set some financial goals, realistic financial goals, and address kind of their fear, maybe even some guilt that they might have about how they've spent, poorly in the past, and build their confidence back up. Because again, running your money, sometimes running your money and having a solid spending plan can feel like a full-time job. Hopefully I'm going to bring some clarity and some, peace of mind on how to do it simply and, something that we can easily achieve with a little bit of structure and planning. And again, one of my goals is really, there's so much complex jargon out in the financial world, and I just need to bring some, some easy, simple terms to the conversation. And so with that, I'm offering a 90-day prosperity package, really to help others to, really build some financial foundations to get clarity and confidence in their finances. That 90-day prosperity package includes 3 60-minute coaching sessions where we really can turn this financial plan into some actionable options for your future. I'm offering those in this workshop an exclusive pricing for the next 48 hours. If you're interested in taking me up on that offer, included in the chat is the link to book your consultation. And so if you're interested in leveraging more conversations with me, I'd love to have a consultation where we can kind of chat about how can you develop act on those 7 steps over hopefully the next year and really make progress on your financial goals. And with that, thank you. Thank you for joining. Follow me on social media. Thank you so much, Jessica, for joining. This will be recorded. Thank you, Cindy. This will be recorded. So if you did want to take a look at what were some of the early steps that we talked about, Jessica, I'll send the replay out tomorrow. And please download your workbook. It's a printable where you can take a look at it and use any of the pages that are available. Any questions? Okay, well,
No questions.
thank you. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate your participation. You enjoy the rest of the evening, okay?
Thank you.
You too.
Okay.
Talk to you
Bye.
Bye
soon.
now.